Good morning, I'm Adam Sexton. Republicans in New Hampshire's 1st Congressional District are working to end a decade-long losing streak. A big part of that equation is picking a winner for their next nominee. One of the candidates trying to make that case this cycle is a political newcomer from Bedford, Melissa Bailey, and she joins us this morning on Close Up. Melissa, thanks for being here.
Hi, Adam. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really grateful to be here today.
So just tell us a little bit about who you are and why you're running for Congress.
Okay, thanks, Adam. Well, as a mom, I wake up in the morning and I wonder about the future of our country. I want the best possible future for my children and for children all across the Granite State. I want them to live in a country that is safe and free and full of opportunities. And as a mom, I've been on the front lines of raising my family, and I have seen firsthand how our next generation is being harmed by a far left agenda that has taken over our culture and our politics, our schools and our institutions. Instead of teaching our children about all the things that make America great, things like hard work and unity and freedom, our kids are learning to see the world through a lens of resentment and division. They're learning more about grievances than gratitude and more about oppression than accountability, and look what it's doing to their generation. And we're seeing it everywhere. It's in our traditions and our values and common sense itself that are being chipped away at year after year. And it reminds me of our iconic Old Man in the Mountain, how it appeared that he collapsed overnight, but in reality, it was a gradual weakening over a long period of time. And that's exactly what I'm seeing in our country today. And it's not just about our values. The left's reckless policies when it comes to open borders and when it comes to assaulting American energy independence and when it comes to the reckless spending on everything except the American people, it has made life so expensive here in New Hampshire. Families are being crushed under the high cost of everything.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So I'm running for Congress because I think we can do better. I think President Trump is steering us back in the right direction when it comes to restoring common sense and law and order. I think his leadership is bringing back strength and stability here at home and on the world stage. And so I'm running so that I can fight for the American family and preserve the American dream. We need family, faith, and patriotism more than ever right now, and that's what I'll be fighting for in Washington.
Yeah, border, immigration, energy, those are pretty straightforward on policy. The other concerns you had are more cultural or educational. What can Congress do on those fronts? What would you do in Washington?
Yeah, I think it's about leaders that stand up for our families. So protecting the American family is the most important priority for me. And families, they are the foundation of our country. Strong families lead to strong communities, and that leads to a strong America. And having strong families is about affordability, and it is about safety, as you mentioned, but it's also about protecting our children. So I think in Washington, we need leaders who are willing to stand up and say, it's not okay to put boys in our girls' sports. It's not okay to replace the ABCs with DEI. It's not okay to be teaching our children to hate our country. We need leaders who are willing to stand up and say our children, our next generation, they need a sense of purpose and a desire to make our country a better place.
On the issues, you mentioned the cost of living. That's huge right now.
Yeah.
What can you do in Congress to make life more affordable for the constituents in CD1?
Yeah. Well, the number one thing we have to do is we need a smarter government that stops wasting our hard-earned money. So, like President Trump, I have a business mindset. Early in my career, I was a financial auditor. So I would go into companies and I'd have to fully understand their financial statements and their internal processes in order to identify inefficiencies, in order to recommend improvements and implement best practices. And that's exactly what we need to do in our federal government right now. We need the same accountability and discipline to ensure that the federal government is working for the American people.
On tariffs, you know, this is something where a lot of Republicans and a lot of Americans generally have said, okay, President Trump is a business guy, let's give him some chance to negotiate and get better deals here. We're 10 months in, some of those deals have come, others have not. How much more patience do you have as a conservative Republican for higher taxes on trade that are raising the cost of some goods?
Well, when I look at tariffs, Adam, I don't see it just as an economic issue. I see it as a national security issue. So there's more reasons that President Trump is imposing tariffs than just for economic reasons. And I think for the economic reasons, we're going to see those more long term. So I do understand it's frustrating that things have been more expensive in the short run, but I think we have to look long term about our national security and do we have all of the critical resources in the industries that we need here in America.
And tariffs are just one aspect of the government in which, President Trump has taken a much more expansive view of executive powers. As a conservative, is there anything the Trump administration is doing that is giving you pause when it comes to exercising federal power?
I don't think he's expanding federal power. I think he's doing what the American people elected him to do. And I think that it's a lot of outrage over nothing. I think it's owning this narrative that President Trump is doing things that he shouldn't. And I don't buy into it. And I don't think the American people are buying into it anymore either.
For instance, the deploying the National Guard across state lines into a state in which the governor has said he has not requested that. On principle, if a Democratic president did something like that, you wouldn't have any problem with it.
Well, these sanctuary cities are the ones breaking the law, and I think that people need to really just use common sense. I'm a mom. I want safe communities for my children and for children all across America. And if we could focus on that, I think people would agree that, you know what, we need to clean up our cities. We need safety in our cities, and President Trump has already proved it with Washington, D.C. He has proved that crime is a choice, that crime is the government failing to protect its citizens. And so him going into these sanctuary cities, I think it's just common sense. And again, Adam, I think with your children too, you would want safe communities for your children to play in, and you want safe streets to be able to walk down. So that's something we should be able to unite around as Americans.
A huge issue, obviously, and a big part of the America First agenda. I'm curious, though, for your perspective on this bailout that's now going to Argentina, $20 billion. You were in finance. That's a boatload of cash. How is that America First to be sending all this money to Argentina to save their government, essentially?
Yeah. Well, America First is about putting American interests first, no matter where we are in the world, and if we're talking about conflicts or when it comes to other countries. And President Trump has proven that he is the America First president, and I am confident that what he's doing around the world is truly putting America's interests first, whether that's the conflict in Gaza or that's bailout money. I think that we should look to President Trump for that leadership.
Let's circle back to this race itself. Republicans are really looking to pick this seat up. This is one they can pick up, and they've won in the past, although it's been a while. They want a winner. What makes you that choice?
Well, Adam, I will be fighting hard every day to meet the the people of New Hampshire, to understand their priorities and their concerns and how I can best serve them in Washington. I am at a place in my life with young children, with school-age children, that I think a lot of people can relate to. And what makes me unique in this race, what I'm confident about, is that I certainly am the underdog. I am new to this race, and that means that I will be fighting with grit and determination, that I will be working harder than anyone in this race. And the thing I know about underdogs is that Granite Staters, we love a good underdog story. My favorite is Tom Brady, fourth-string quarterback in college to back up in the NFL to greatest of all time. So I would say to the people of New Hampshire, if you like a good underdog story, that you shouldn't just cheer for the underdog in this race, but you should vote for the underdog in this race.
Yeah, and obviously within this last week, we saw Anthony DiLorenzo get into the race. He is a candidate who can self-fund a campaign with a significant amount of resources, and the word on the street is he's going to do that. What is your plan to overcome those long odds when it comes to financing a campaign?
Well, like the Patriots, I'm not going to give you my playbook, but I would say I understand the enormity of the financial resources it will take to win this race. But at the same time, the most important resource are the hearts and minds of the people here of New Hampshire, so that's where my focus will be. Okay,
and do you think that the legislature, controlled by Republicans, should redraw the maps, redistrict to make CD1 a little bit more Republican, to make this a seat that the GOP can pick up?
So that's a state issue, and that's another one of these things in this race that I can't control, just like I can't control who's coming into the race. And there are going to be so many things over the next year that I can't even anticipate. So I'm just focused on the things that I can control in this race, Adam.
All right, Melissa Bailey, thank you for joining us on Close Up. We'll see you out there on the campaign trail.
Thank you.